All right, today we're jumping into the epic story of a 15th century warrior. We're talking about a military genius whose rebellion against a massive empire forged a legend that, honestly, still defines a nation to this day.
So this is Gjergj Kastrioti, but chances are you know him by another name, Skanderbeg. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the man himself, let's talk about his reputation, because it's almost mythical. I mean, how on earth did one guy become such a huge thorn in the side of one of history's most powerful empires?
Yeah, that's pretty much how history sums him up. Ever victorious. I mean, what a title, right? But to really get how he earned it, we have to look at the biggest irony of his entire life. He was actually a product of the very same empire he would spend his life fighting against. So let's dig into Skanderbeg's early years. This is where you'll see he wasn't a rebel at all. Nope, he was a rising star in the Ottoman military, basically forged into a weapon by the Sultan himself. Okay, so he was born Gjergj Kastrioti, around 1405. He was born into the Albanian nobility. His dad, Gjergj Kastrioti, was a lord ruling over a chunk of north-central Albania. Now, you had to picture the Balkans at this time. It was this patchwork of small principalities, all of them living in the massive shadow of the expanding Ottoman Empire. And that proximity to a superpower, well, that would define Gjergj's entire life. So, to keep the peace and prove his loyalty, Gjergj Kastrioti acted as a vassal to the Sultan. This was pretty common for local rulers back then, and it meant sending his sons to the Ottoman court as, well, basically as a guarantee of good behavior. While some of his brothers were taken into the formal desertion system, that's this military recruitment program, Gjergj's role was a bit different. He was more of a political hostage, a living symbol of his dad's allegiance. But hey, don't picture some dark dungeon. The Sultan's court was like the West Point of its era, It was the absolute best military and administrative school in the entire empire. For 20 years, Gjergj was totally immersed in Ottoman culture, learning warfare, strategy, you name it. He even converted to Islam. And he didn't just get by, he excelled. He became one of the empire's most promising young commanders. In fact, the Sultan himself, Murad II, was so blown away by his military skills that he gave him a new name, Skanderbeg. That means Lord Alexander. And yeah, it's a direct comparison to Alexander the Great. That tells you everything about how highly they thought of him. And honestly, that's what makes what he did next so unbelievably shocking. And that brings us to the moment that completely defined his life, his stunning betrayal and his defiant ride back to his homeland. So what could possibly make this brilliant, decorated Ottoman general turn his back on the Sultan? Well, the year is 1443. Skanderbeg is fighting for the Sultan in a huge battle, the Battle of Niš, against a Christian army. And right there, in the middle of all that chaos, he sees his chance to completely change his destiny. And he didn't just run away. Oh no, he had a masterful plan. He and about 300 Albanian soldiers who were loyal to him just walked away from the Ottoman lines. He marched straight for Krujë, his father's old fortress, and get this, he hands the governor a forged letter, supposedly from the Sultan, giving him control of the city. And the governor totally bought it. Just like that, the castle was his. So, with his family's fortress now back in his hands, he immediately made a declaration. One that would kick off the next 25 years of war. And his transformation was, wow, immediate and total. He renounced Islam and went back to Christianity. He declared a holy war against the very empire that had trained him. And then, on the walls of Krujë, he raised his family's banner, a red flag with a black, double-headed eagle. Skanderbeg was gone. Skanderbeg, the Lord of Albania, had arrived. Okay, so grabbing one castle is one thing, but holding on to it and an entire nation against the world's biggest military superpower, that's another story entirely. And, his biggest challenge at first wasn't even the Ottomans. It was the Albanians themselves. The whole region was this tangled web of feuding noble families, all fiercely independent and not trusting anyone. To even survive, Skanderbeg had to unite them first. Right, so his first real battle wasn't fought with cannons, it was fought with diplomacy. He called all the Albanian nobles together and somehow convinced them to put aside their old rivalries and form the League of Lezhë, a military alliance with him as the commander. For the very first time, Albania was actually united.
But even with everyone on the same page, they were just hopelessly outmatched. I mean, Skanderbeg's army was maybe 15,000 men on a good day. The Ottoman armies coming after him were gigantic, well-supplied forces. So the big question is, how in the world did he survive? And this is where the irony is just perfect. He literally took every single thing the Ottomans taught him about war and turned it right back against them. He knew how they thought, how their supply lines worked, their whole chain of command. He refused to fight a conventional battle. Instead, he made Albania's brutal, mountainous terrain his greatest weapon, fighting this brilliant guerrilla war of hit-and-run raids, ambushes, and constant harassment that just bled the bigger army dry. Now, this whole new way of fighting was about to face its ultimate test in the year 1450. Sultan Murad II was just fed up with this rebellion. He decided to crush Skanderbeg himself, personally, bringing the full, terrifying might of the empire right to the gates of Krujë. So Sultan Murad rolls up with an army of, get ready for this, 100,000 soldiers. To put that into perspective, that's more people than lived in most major European cities at the time. This wasn't just an army meant to win a battle, it was a force designed to completely annihilate the Albanian resistance. And how did Skanderbeg respond? With his signature strategy, of course. He had his men burn the fields and poison the wells, making sure that massive army couldn't live off the land. Then, with the main part of his army, he just vanished into the mountains surrounding Krujë, launching these non-stop, lightning-fast raids on the Ottoman camp. And inside the castle itself, he left just 1,500 of his most trusted men to defend it. Think about those odds. It's staggering. It seems like an absolutely impossible fight. But that tiny garrison, led by his lieutenant Vranakanti, somehow managed to fight off every single major assault the Ottomans threw at them. So after 5 long months, the Ottoman camp was just wrecked by disease, starvation, and Skanderbeg's relentless attacks. They lost something like 20,000 soldiers. Completely defeated, Murad II finally gave up, lifted the siege, and retreated in total failure. Krujë had held, and the legend was now set in stone. Skanderbeg kept on fighting right up until his death from illness in 1468. But what he created over that 25-year war was something much more lasting than just a single victory. For the Albanian people, he forged a true symbol of national identity. And for the rest of Europe, he was seen as a bulwark, the champion of Christ who held back the Ottoman tide. He became a living legend. And you can see the connection between his time and ours so clearly right here. On the left, that's the banner he raised over Krujë way back in 1443. And on the right, that's the national flag of Albania today. The very symbol of his defiance became the symbol of a nation. So what is it that turns a brilliant leader into an enduring national legend? Is it just winning impossible battles or uniting a fractured people? Or is it something more, like embodying an unbreakable, unshakable will to be free? Well, for Albania, the answer is Gjergj Kastrioti Skanderbeg, the Ottoman hostage who came back as a champion, and whose story truly became the soul of a nation.